too. Now, without further ado, it's a great pleasure for me to give the floor to Her Excellency Minister of State of the Federal Foreign Office of Germany, Michelle Müntefering. Michelle, you have the floor.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Minister of State, Mrs. Reem al-Hashimi, Nadia Murad, the social fabric of an entire society has been torn. Nadia, when you briefed the Security Council during the German presidency in April 2019, these were your words. You delivered a chilling account of the horrible crimes that were committed against the Yazidis in Iraq. Your words are etched in our memories. Nadia, we had an opportunity to meet in person in New York in October last year when we discussed violence against women in conflicts. Since then, the world has changed profoundly. But while the world's attention is focused on the COVID-19 pandemic, the conflicts continue. And sexual crimes, or rather sexual terror, are constantly being used as a tool to cripple societies. We are confronted with stark realities on this day in particular. 6 years after the mass persecution by Daesh, the Yazidis are still suffering the consequences. The threat of Daesh still lurks in the shadows. It has yet to be overcome. And the challenges for the Yazidi community are manifold. It is up to us not to let them down, but to help them to build a better future. I am therefore very grateful for today's virtual event as it turns the spotlight on a situation that shouldn't be forgotten by the world. Thousands of Yazidis were murdered or driven out of their homes. Women, girls, and boys were enslaved and subjected to sexual and gender-based violence on a massive scale. It was, once again, women and children who were and are the most vulnerable. Almost 3,000 people are still missed by their families, their parents, grandparents, children, brothers and sisters who don't even know what has become of their beloved ones. 6 years on, we are here to take stock of what the international community has done and what remains to be done to end the Yazidis' suffering and give the survivors prospects for the future. And let me be clear when I say that the first prerequisite for this is to bring the perpetrators, the terror regime installed by Daesh, to justice. Impunity constitutes brutal injustice. We have to put an end to this. We have to achieve accountability. Justice and accountability shouldn't be abstract concepts that may or may not be realized depending on the political will. The survivors have a right to justice and accountability. Today, we are calling for results, and therefore we are calling for investigations, fair trials, timely sentences, and their full enforcement. UNITAD is collecting evidence across Iraq to provide the basis for delivering accountability for the unspeakable crimes committed against the Yazidis, crimes that may amount to war crimes, crimes against humanity and genocide. Germany fully supports the remarkable work done by UNITAD. Germany law recognizes universal jurisdiction for war crimes, crimes against humanity and genocide under international law. German prosecutors have been investigating war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by Daesh in Iraq and Syria on this basis since 2014. The investigations have resulted in several trials. The focus of these trials is on crimes committed against Yazidi women and girls. These trials demonstrate that survivors can seek justice even thousands of miles away from where the crimes have been committed. And while these efforts are no substitute for a strategy for comprehensive justice for the victims of Daesh, we will support the fight against impunity in this way. And I call on all states to use all legal means at their disposal to end impunity. My country remains deeply committed to the Yazidis in Iraq and Syria. Many Yazidi families have found asylum and new homes here in Germany. Sinjar, where over 76 mass graves were discovered, is one of the priority regions for Germany's stabilization and reconstruction projects in Iraq. We know that we cannot undo the suffering, but I believe that the international community is able to help mitigate the trauma that many of the Yazidi community still experience. We can give them prospects for their future by empowering and involving them. We need a survivor-centered approach. This is, Nadia, at the heart of your initiative. We have to take action on the ground in order to enable the voluntary return of the displaced population in safety and dignity. So we are cooperating closely with UN agencies, removing explosive devices and rebuilding schools, for example, supporting micro-entrepreneurs and strengthening community policing. Furthermore, promoting women's rights is one of Germany's top priorities. And this is also a key focus of Nadia's initiative. I am glad that we are making a key contribution to treating survivors suffering from trauma. In particular, we are training women and girls in IDP camps as trauma counselors. Ladies and gentlemen, we owe this to victims. We won't forget them. Nadia Murad has given them a voice and a face. Reconciliation and healing is needed, including justice for the survivors. Nadia, I'm honored to hear you speak once again today. It's so good to see you continuing your work, having built a network for peace and empowerment. We are living in times in which civil society has to take action. Civil society is the lifeblood of democracy. Minister Heiko Maas sends his best regards, and I'm looking forward to hear
Reem Al-Hashimi, our co-host, the Minister of State for International Cooperation of the United Arab Emirates. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Excellencies and dear colleagues. I'm deeply honored to join you today as we commemorate the 6th anniversary of the genocidal campaign against the Yazidi minority. The UAE is very proud to co-host this event with Nadia's initiative and the permanent mission of Germany. What happened in Sinjar should not and cannot recede into history. Such was its barbarity and atrocious violence that it seems scarcely believable that we're only talking about something that happened 6 years ago. Yet the very fact of its immediacy demands our attention. We must not be complacent or forgetful, for we have seen what happens when extremism is allowed to fester and to ferment. It is a warning and a lesson for countries, for institutions, and for communities that value tolerance, inclusion, and gender equality. We must be together and we must be vigilant and preempt that which is unforgivable in this or in any other time. We, the international community and the United Arab Emirates, are inspired daily by the resilience of the Yazidi people and all the blueprint for recovery that Nadia Murad and her colleagues have gifted the international community. I've had the pleasure of meeting with her several times, both in the United States and here in the UAE, and we are so proud to work with Nadia's initiative on the long road towards a normalcy for her and for survivors. We've committed to develop comprehensive potable water in Sinjar, sanitations, hygiene projects in her hometown, and also signed up on an agreement with UNOPS for an agricultural and educational institution. In so doing, we're learning how to reframe how we and other stakeholders think about our roles in supporting communities that have endured such atrocity or stand at risk of the same. And when we listen to Nadia and to other survivors, what they have to say helps shape our future at home and abroad. Today, humbly, I'd like to highlight 3 themes that have resonated with us here in the UAE and are born of the wisdom and the courage of Nadia and her fellow survivors. First, we undermine recovery if we accept impunity towards sexual violence. It is not only a moral obligation to seek justice, but a strategic investment in the long-term stability and well-being of a society. Those communities that lack confidence in government institutions or feel powerless or witness the normalization of sexual violence, these are the incubators of future conflict, of displacement, and cycles of inescapable poverty, both moral and economic. Supporting mechanisms like UNITAD and funding the creation of gender-responsive justice systems are key levers to both respect and protect victims and invest in the future. And here I'd like to echo what my colleague from Germany just said previous to my own remarks. Second, the end of conflict, and for that matter, the restoration of justice, are only elements of recovery. Where do children go to school? Is there safe drinking water? How will women earn their livelihoods? As Nadia's initiative has long emphasized, if we are to be helpful and impactful in the wake of an atrocity, we require a holistic mindset and a resourcing approach. And then third, our job as the international community is to listen to survivors and respond to the needs that they identify. In Sinjar, this has meant putting affected people in the decision-making roles of recovery projects and enabling the affected community to design and monitor the impacts of these partnerships. It is an example of the survivor-led recovery model we would be wise to follow elsewhere in the world. It is in this spirit that I hope today can not only be a commemoration of the Yazidi victims of atrocity, but a celebration of their heroism and their leadership for showing us the way toward a better system for prevention, response, and recovery. And I trust that with Nadia, with Amal Clooney, with states such as Germany, the United States, the United Nations, and all the friends and allies that are joining us here today, I am hopeful and optimistic that we will get there. Thank you all for your time and attention, and big kisses to you, Nadia, from across this virtual platform.
Green, thank you very much for your statement. I shall now give the floor to the most important person in this VTC, Nadia Murad. You have the floor.
Today is the 6th anniversary of the Yazidi Genocide. For many of you, the concept of an active genocide may not make sense. But my community has lived this horrific experience for the past 6 years. The Yazidis were living peacefully before ISIS came to destroy our lives. We were farmers and lived a simple life. But when ISIS launched their genocidal campaign, my entire family was shattered. I lost my beloved mother, nieces, and 6 brothers. The rest of my family and I were taken into ISIS captivity. My story is not unique. It is the story of thousands of Yazidi women and girls who were kidnapped into sexual slavery. Families who survived were forced to flee. Our homes, schools, hospitals, and temples were burned. Yazidi girls as young as 8 and 9 years old were used as sex slaves. Some have survived, but they continue to suffer from a lack of access to healthcare and rehabilitation. Yazidi children and survivors of sexual violence deserve better care. As we speak, there are over 2,800 Yazidi women and children who are still missing and in captivity. No collective action has been taken to search for and rescue those women and children. The world watched in outrage and demanded that tangible action be taken to end the genocide. But 6 years later, the international community has failed to keep its commitments to protect those most vulnerable, especially women and children. Today, Yazidis are traumatized, especially the women and children who survived ISIS captivity. They either remain displaced in IDP camps or have returned to their villages, which lack the most basic services. The 100,000 Yazidis who have returned to their homes in Sinjar suffer from a lack of healthcare, education, clean water, and security. Dozens of mass graves have yet to be exhumed. Survivors continue to await justice and accountability, while desperately wanting to properly bury their loved ones. How can the community heal and return while dozens of mass graves have not been exhumed? We must pursue justice and accountability by collecting evidence and putting ISIS perpetrators on trial. As my lawyer and good friend Amal Clooney, who has been a tireless advocate on behalf of the Yazidi survivors, has explained and will discuss further in her speech today. Both Amal and I argued that the UN should establish an international investigation in Iraq. I am grateful that Iraq and the Security Council supported this motion, and I commend UNITED and Mr. Karim Khan for the work it has done so far. But an investigation is not a trial, and we want our day in court. The international community must fulfill its promise to deliver justice for the Yazidi community. The situation is exacerbated by the uncertainty over which government will control Sinjar. As a result of this dispute, both national governments refuse to invest resources in repairing infrastructure and housing in Sinjar, while some international organizations invest in other regions of Iraq. Sinjar is often left behind and continues to regress without long-term investment. We have pleaded with government officials in Baghdad and Erbil to resolve their disputes and help the Yazidis restore their lives. We have pleaded for them to create a task force to search for and rescue the missing Yazidi women and children. We have pleaded with the governments in Baghdad and Erbil, as well as the international community, to rebuild the Yazidi homeland and seek justice for survivors. But after so many years of waiting and enduring the effects of genocide, we feel that the international community and the governments in Baghdad and Erbil have abandoned us. We must do better. We must not let another year go by accepting the status quo. The status quo is destroying my community. International inaction is enabling ISIS to accomplish their goal of eradicating the Yazidis from Iraq. We recognize that both Baghdad and Erbil are facing economic challenges and difficulties related to the COVID-19. But there are tangible and sustainable actions that can be taken to address the effects of genocide on the Yazidi community. Once again, I call on the governments in Iraq and Erbil to search for and rescue those still missing, to resolve issues of local governance and security in Sinjar, and to invest in the redevelopment of the region. Ignoring the suffering of Yazidis is unacceptable. The international community must not defer meaningful action any longer. Yazidis deserve support to rebuild. Yazidis deserve peace and security. They deserve justice and accountability. Survivors cannot wait another 6 years for the world to act. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nadia, for your moving words and for your urgent plea. Let me say that here in New York at the United Nations, unfortunately, we hear many statements about terrible situations, but still, I find it very hard to guard my professional distance here. Let me just say that before I give the floor now to our next speaker on the list, Amal Clooney, Nadia's, I think, alter ego on this important matter. Amal, you have the floor. Amal, you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry. Thank you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me today. Thank you to Germany and the UAE for convening us. Thank you, most importantly, to Nadia for her powerful remarks. We are here to mark 6 years since the Yazidi genocide began, and the life of every Yazidi as they knew it came to an end. For many, the 3rd of August 2014 was the last time they saw their mother, held their child, or spoke to a sibling, the last time they felt safe or had hope for the future. We all know what happened. We all saw images of thousands of Yazidis crossing mountains to flee murder and rape and pillage in their home. We've heard the testimony of survivors like Nadia, who were tortured at the hands of a group that preyed on the young and vulnerable. We've read the reports documenting the execution of thousands of Yazidis, the brainwashing of young boys forced to fight on the front lines, and the subjugation of girls in a system of sexual slavery unlike anything we have seen in modern times. ISIS was, of course, responsible for this devastation, but the rest of us are responsible for what we did or did not do since we knew about it. It is, of course, a challenging time for the world. We are fighting a global pandemic and hope each day for a vaccine. But when I addressed the UN Security Council last year, I said that we were already dealing with a pandemic of a different kind, a pandemic of violence, including sexual violence against women and minorities. I told the Council that the antidote was justice. I put forward 4 alternative pathways to create or empower an international court to put ISIS on trial, including granting jurisdiction to the International Criminal Court or creating a court by treaty between Iraq and the UN. And I said that if we don't act now, it may be too late, because ISIS fighters held in makeshift prisons in Syria were at risk of escape. I repeated this message at the UN General Assembly in September. And as we are convened here almost a year later, let me update you on what progress has been made on these fronts. None. No progress has been made. None of the pathways to a court have been studied, pursued, or seriously discussed at the United Nations or by the Security Council. No conference of foreign ministers has been convened. No government proposals or counter-proposals have been put forward and analyzed. No state has offered to host international trials. Meanwhile, the escapes that we feared took place, with hundreds of prisoners reportedly walking free from ISIS camps last October. So the update is no progress, even though the survivors could not be more deserving or the perpetrators more reprehensible. Of course, there are important milestones that we should mark. Credit must go to the UK and the US and other Security Council members for spearheading the effort to create a UN investigation that is now operational in Iraq. Credit must go to European prosecutors, including in Germany, France, and the Netherlands, for the trials that they have initiated against ISIS fighters and those who bankrolled their crimes. Germany has gone further than any other state by prosecuting an Iraqi national for genocide under universal jurisdiction laws, the first trial of its kind anywhere in the world. And I'm privileged to represent a victim in that trial. But survivors tell me they cannot understand how 6 years after the genocide, the vast majority of ISIS fighters can simply go on with their lives. So in preparing these remarks, I looked back at how the world has responded to such atrocities in the past. Of course, many gruesome crimes around the world go unpunished every day. But when Hitler's men murdered 6 million Jews, the world said never again. And states created the United Nations so that, at least when it comes to this crime, the crime of genocide, the world would not stand idly by. 6 years after the genocide perpetrated by the Nazis, an international trial of the 24 principal architects of the genocide had been organized in Nuremberg, Germany, by the US, UK, France, and Russia. 19 of them had been convicted, and more than 140 lower-level Nazis had been convicted in other trials. 6 years after the Rwandan genocide was the year 2000. By then, the UN Security Council had created an international court on behalf of almost 200 UN member states, and this court, based in Tanzania, had indicted more than 60 people and convicted 8. 6 years after genocide in Bosnia, an international court in The Hague, backed by the UN Security Council, had indicted 69 people for crimes committed in the former Yugoslavia and convicted 13. More recently, we have witnessed genocide of the Rohingya in Myanmar. This led 35 states within the UN Human Rights Council to establish an international team to prepare case files against perpetrators. 57 nations support a case brought by the Gambia against Myanmar under the Genocide Convention at the International Court of Justice. And crimes in Myanmar are currently under investigation at the International Criminal Court. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Yazidi survivors deserve no less. The crimes committed by ISIS were committed by individual men and women, and the responsibility of the international community to respond is one that also rests with individuals. That means the leaders of states, the diplomats of the United Nations, and all those with an influence who can be advocates for justice. Each and every one of you. Doing nothing is not only wrong, it is dangerous because these fighters are not going anywhere and their toxic ideology continues to spread. And justice is possible now, just as it has been possible before, if only it is made a priority. Let me end with a quote from a courageous human rights leader who sadly passed away last month, John Lewis. His last letter was published in the New York Times a few days ago. And in it, he called on us all to do more, try harder to make a positive change in the world. As he put it, when historians pick up their pens to write the story of the 21st century, let them say that it was your generation who laid down the heavy burdens of hate at last, and that peace finally triumphed over violence, aggression, and war. I echo his words, and I believe that there can be no peace unless the victims of violence, aggression, and war see that justice is done. So I hope that when it comes to pandemics that are man-made, those we can prevent and must punish, we will finally start to see more progress. Thank you.
Amal, thank you very much for your inspiring words, and thank you even more for putting your finger into the wound and reminding all of us of our obligations. After 4 strong women, I shall now give the floor to Mohammed Ba Al-Ulum, the permanent representative of Iraq.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Her Excellency Michelle Montenfring, Minister of State of the Federal Foreign Office of Germany. Her Excellency Mrs. Reem Al-Hashimi, United Arab Emirates, Minister of State for International Cooperation. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to thank Germany and United Arab Emirates for organizing this important event and the participation of the SRSG, Jeanine Blaschert, head of UNITAD, Mr. Karim Khan, for being with us today. We are here together to commemorate all Iraqi victims of Daesh, particularly Yazidis, and also to educate about the plight of survivors of the heinous crimes of Daesh. I extend a special welcome to one of the brave survivors, our Iraqi daughter, Mrs. Nadia Murad. Ladies and gentlemen, Daesh committed heinous crimes against everyone in Iraq, oppressing women and children using sexual violence as a weapon of war, committing mass executions and destructions of every aspect of livelihood, including worshipping shrines. Daesh tried to wipe out Yazidis in an attempt to destroy Iraqi diversity and peaceful coexistence that is guaranteed by our constitution. However, our armed forces, along with the Popular Mobilization Unit and the Peshmerga and other Iraqis who fought, sacrificed, and dared to liberate our cities and villages, laid out epics of national heroism that enshrined and cemented feelings of unity and dismantled the terrorists' plans to destroy the Iraqi national fabric. On this occasion, the Iraqi government reaffirmed its commitment to support a voluntary and dignified return and in safe conditions for the displaced Yazidis and other Iraqis who were displaced by the threats of Daesh. We call for the international community to shoulder its responsibilities in helping Iraq identify the fate of missing and kidnapped people and liberate living survivors from them, as there are some 2,500, mostly women and children, kidnapped Yazidis still missing since 2014. We will spare no effort to continue to search for the fate and whereabouts of these missing persons and to provide hope and support to their families. Ladies and gentlemen, as part of Iraq's goal to provide redress to victims and deter future terrorists, we work on two levels. On the national level, the Iraqi presidency submitted a draft bill on Yazidi survivors of Daesh in April 2019. This bill was later expanded to include all survivors of Daesh sexual violence. This bill calls for holding the perpetrators of such acts accountable and in accordance with the applicable national law. The draft law set up various reparation measures for the survivors of captivity and acknowledge the issue of children-born sexual violence and call for it to be addressed. Further, the President of Iraq, His Excellency Dr. Barham Saleh, and while commemorating the 6th anniversary of the plight of Yazidis, called for, I quote, "We must ease the administrative obstacles that continue to block the draft bill in order to benefit and achieve justice to Yazidi and all victim survivors of Daesh heinous crimes," end of the quote. On the international level, we collaborated with the United Kingdom to produce the milestone Security Council resolution 2379 for 2017. Pursuant to this resolution, UNITAD was established, an investigation team to hold Daesh accountable and prosecute them on the basis of objective, evidence-based investigation and conducted in the highest possible standards while respecting applicable national law and in conformity with the international law. Foreign terrorist fighters affiliated to Daesh came from over 100 countries, committing grave abuses of international human rights law, international criminal law, and international humanitarian law. Acts that may amount to war crimes, crimes against humanity and genocide, not to mention the economical costs that reach billions of dollars. Yet, there are few member states with FTF citizens held in Iraq that rejecting their trial under incumbent Iraqi laws. Further, rejecting the repatriation of their FTF citizens to their own country. And if that is not hard to grasp, they further insist on putting their FTF citizens on trial in Iraq, but not under Iraqi law. This position, to say the least, is incoherent. We are reaching the end of 2 years period of UNITAD team's work. At a time, the families of the victims of ISIS are eager and look forward to tangible results. During this period, the government committed itself to cooperating fully with the international investigation team and provide all possible assistance through the competent Iraqi authorities to the investigation team. Last March, Iraq has, with sufficient pieces of evidence, were provided, held accountable Daesh terrorists who has perpetrated sexual violence, crimes against a Yazidi female survivor who was back then only 14 years old. The perpetrator was found guilty before the court of participating in the violation and abduction of Yazidi girl. Iraq believes that such a move would encourage other women and girls violated and abducted by Daesh to come forward and seek justice, as the judicial system had been hampered in bringing this kind of cases by the reluctance of the victim to testify in public. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe the best way to redress all Iraqi victims of terrorism and the world over is by diagnosing the causes and countering this violent extremism, cooperation and implementation of relevant Security Council sanctions on arming, financing, movement, and spread of extremist thoughts is vital to succeed. I thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you for your remarks, Ambassador. We shall now listen to a video message by Janine Hennis-Plaschert, the SRSG.
It pains me that 6 years to the day after Daesh ISIL uprooted the Yazidis from Sinjar, their ordeal is not over, and that they have not fully returned to their ancestral land. In 2014, Daesh ravaged through Sinjar, killing and destroying, singling out Yazidis in their systematic campaign of destruction. Thousands upon thousands of people fled to the mountains. Many were killed, women and children were kidnapped and enslaved, subjected to heinous sexual crimes. Many remain missing to this day, and the survivors continue to carry scars. Women in particular suffer acutely from stigma and rejection. We all remember their tragedy too well. Now I take heart in the determination of the many Yazidis pursuing freedom and justice for their community. But sadly, what is not making headlines anymore is that 3 years after the military defeat of Daesh, Sinjaris continue to suffer. They continue to suffer from insecurity, the absence of adequate services, and the lack of a unified administration. How come? Why must they continue to pay the price? We know full well that sustainable solutions are within reach. Stable governance and security structures are crucial foundations for the community to rebuild and thrive. So once again, I call on the governments in Baghdad and Erbil to urgently resolve this file, placing Sinjari's interests first and foremost. We owe it to the victims, we owe it to the survivors, we owe it to our sense of humanity.
Thanks to Janine. Next speaker on my list is Karim Khan, the Special Advisor to the Secretary General and head of the team investigating Islamic State actions in Iraq. Karim, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It really is a humbling experience to join all of you in remembrance to events that took place or that started 6 years ago. And one can dive in and start in the 5 minutes, go through a list of achievements and also deficiencies. But with your leave, I think it's sometimes important to pause and to reflect. And what I would urge with the greatest humility at the end of this session, if we're to move forward, let's reflect upon the words, the powerful words of Nadia, and also the message of Amal, and also what the SRSG, Janine Hennis-Plasschaert, has just said. 6 years ago today, pogroms commenced that not only shocked the conscience of humanity, it shamed the conscience of humanity. And I've had the distinct honor of meeting survivor after survivor. And what strikes me and never ceases to amaze me is that when I speak to a whole variety of victims, those that have been enslaved and live to tell the tale, their concern is not simply one for themselves. It is devoid very often of pity. It is, as Nadia and others have mentioned, a concern of where are their sisters and their mothers? Where are their remains of their fathers or their brothers? And I think this has to be etched or seared, in fact, upon our memory and upon our own souls. Because this care for the other is what defines us as humanity. And it's that insistent demand for justice that really, if I may say so, Nadia personifies. Nadia's persistent demand, coming from a village of Kojo to the halls of the United Nations and the capitals of the world, with a simple and yet resounding message that this is wrong. It requires investigation. It requires juridical determination if we are to be true as an international community, that every life matters, that every human being has certain inalienable rights. And if these are to stop being platitudes or false promises, it requires continued action. I really applaud the work of Nadia Murad, the advocacy of Amal Clooney, the political stewardship of the United Kingdom, our penholder, the government of Iraq, the Security Council, to create UNITAD. But we are an investigative team on the lookout for a court. And we're trying to feed into as many courts as possible where fair trials can be conducted. This unity of the council coalesced around a common objective, namely the common ground that repudiated the false un-Islamic ideology of Daesh. That pretense that it had anything to do with religion was to be exposed, and that the rights of the individual to practice what they wish, to live lives with freedom, was something of concern to the whole international community. I take this opportunity to note the role of those organizing today. The Federal Republic of Germany has been a strong ally to UNITAD in terms of giving us expert personnel to the analysis unit, financial investigative capacity. The United Arab Emirates that have helped with our investigations into sexual or gender-based crimes. Of course, the constant and unwavering support of the United Kingdom, the United States, the Netherlands for witness protection, United States for exhumation, Denmark, and Sweden. All of that has allowed UNITAD to help with exhumations, to collect evidence, whether it's testimonial or digital, to work with the government of Iraq, the Iraqi judiciary, so we could collect cell site records from June to August 2014 that allows us to get a grip on the criminal network of Daesh, where individuals of interest to our investigations went, so that we can actually fulfill a promise that Nadia has mentioned, that individuals and survivors have their right to confront their perpetrators in a court of law. I have had the sober privilege of seeing the effect of that in my career. Sometimes I have seen individuals that are, very often the world would say, broken, confront their accuser in a courtroom, and the power imbalance fundamentally alters in that scenario. The individual that has been oppressed or tortured has the whip hand. And the fact of confronting an accuser and giving an account can be immensely powerful. And it can also have an effect on the perpetrator as well. A lot has been said regarding the importance of infrastructure. Education, health are also forms of justice. Not all justice is confined to the courtroom. But the part of UNITAD's mandate that I'm responsible for, that the Council has entrusted to us, deals with legal accountability. And I applaud the work of the government of Iraq and President Barham Salih to present a bill to Parliament last November that would allow Iraq to prosecute the acts of Daesh against all communities, including the Yazidi community, as genocide, crimes against humanity, or war crimes. In my respectful view, this is critically important. If we don't call it out for what it was, if we don't label the crimes correctly, we are doomed, or at least there's a real risk that they may be reconsidered, they may reoccur. And I think in terms of giving confidence to the Yazidi community, the courage and the stamina of the international community to create that piece of legal architecture would go a long way. My final remarks, if I may, would be really for all of us to recognize the immense courage of the people of Iraq and the Yazidi community. I often say it because I find it really a truism, that their survival, Nadia, your survival, those of the Yazidi individuals that are all over the world now, the way that you are practicing your beliefs is a very eloquent and powerful repudiation of the criminal intents of Daesh to silence your voices, to suffocate your beliefs. And I think it should be a timely reminder for us, the international community, that we must fulfill our collective promises, which is to ensure justice and expose the criminality of Daesh, prove it beyond reasonable doubt in courts throughout the world, wherever possible. And at the same time, by doing that, we will demonstrate the courage of the Iraqi people and the resilience and the heroism of the Yazidi community. Thank you so much.
And thank you very much for these important remarks, Karim. We shall now hear a video message by Joma Jamil Murad, Director of the NABU Organization for Awareness.
Thank you for providing me the opportunity to join this important dialogue today. My name is Joma Jamil Murad. I'm a director of NABU Organization for Awareness. Today, I'm hoping this discussion from Sinjar. Every day, we see firsthand the need for more support for Yazidi survivors of sexual violence and genocide, men and women and children who have been traumatized. These survivors not only suffered during ISIS attacks, but continue to suffer from a lack of basic services such as healthcare and education for the past 6 years. It is disheartening to see what little has been done so far by the international community. The international community knows the atrocity that were committed against the Yazidi. They have acknowledged that this was a genocide. Yet there is still an acute lack of necessary investment and support to allow my community to rebuild and recover. In just the past 8 weeks, we have seen thousands of Yazidi returns to Sinjar each week from the camps due to concerns of the spread of COVID-19 and lack of stability and support in the camps. But unfortunately, displaced Yazidis are returning to a homeland that still remains devastated by the genocide. Homes, schools, hospitals, and farms remain destroyed. The question here is why? Because there simply has not been enough investment into the region by the international community. We must work to rehabilitate schools so that children after 6 years without education can return to learning. We must provide adequate healthcare and sanitation because good health is the foundation of any prosperous community. Now it is time to act. We cannot and we must not wait any longer. The COVID-19 pandemic is creating even more urgency to do what we should have done years ago. Help these women, children, and families recover from brutal violence and destruction that ISIS carried out against them. Thanks for your attention.
I thank Juma for this statement. We shall now have the opportunity to give the floor to representatives of member states and of the civil society. Please mind that we are behind schedule. So I would ask everybody who takes the floor to be really short and crispy in order to give other friends and colleagues the opportunity to address us too. And I already asked those who are at the very end of the list to bear with me that I will need to cut this off at 12 o'clock or a couple of minutes later. So I'm afraid that not everybody will be able to take the floor. First on my list of speakers is Ambassador Kelly Curry, who is Ambassador at Large for Global Women's Issues for the United States. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And while it is wonderful to see so many friends, former and current colleagues on this call, this is, of course, a deeply sad and solemn day of remembrance. And thank you to Germany and the UAE for bringing us together. It's wonderful to see my dear friend Reem Al-Hashimi, and thank you, Minister Muntafarang, and to Nadia and Amal, who we've worked with for so many years on this, for your powerful remarks today. We've come together joined by the moral imperative to address Daesh's hideous atrocities in Iraq and Syria, including the massacre of thousands of Yazidis and the enslavement of more than 6,500 Yazidi women and children, and to call for a fair and transparent system of justice for survivors. As we've witnessed and heard, there is still so much for us to do, and the United States stands with this body to address the ongoing crisis facing Yazidi women and children. The United States, together with the UN, the Global Coalition to Defeat ISIS, and numerous humanitarian organizations, including Nadia's initiative, is providing assistance to Yazidi women, girls, and boys who face enormous challenges in recovering and rebuilding their lives. Currently, we're implementing 9 projects in Sinjar with USAID, and many of these are in coordination with Nadia's initiative and include rehabilitating schools, supporting the restoration of legal services in Sinjar, supplying water and supporting waste management, and we'll soon be providing much needed medical supplies and equipment to Sinjar's General Hospital. Beyond the vital services of healthcare, education, and infrastructure, we must also work together to ensure a fair and transparent legal system is available for returning Yazidi women and children in these communities, and that the perpetrators of these crimes are held accountable. As Amal noted, no Daesh perpetrator has been convicted for these atrocities. Holding ISIS members accountable for the atrocities they've committed, rape, slavery, kidnapping, and murder, will highlight both the immoral and legal acts of individual criminals and the bankrupt ideology of this perverse criminal organization. It will undermine future recruitment and ensure that its defeat is indeed a lasting one. To achieve this, the United States will continue to support the work of UNITAD to document and preserve the evidence of ISIS atrocities. We know serious challenges remain, and collectively we must rise to meet them. We must fortify Yazidi society with support for those suffering from the mental and physical wounds of war. We must restore and preserve the heritage of the Yazidi people. And we must help ensure these communities have the support and protection of inclusive, capable, professional, and rights-respecting governments and security forces. In carrying out this mission, we and our partners are committed to working hand in hand with the Iraqi and Kurdistan regional governments. These two governments, after all, are on the front lines in responding to these challenges. And we are committed to doing the same in Syria. We must come together today to commit and safeguard the Yazidi community in Syria to ensure history does not repeat itself. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Thank you for these remarks, Kelly. I shall now give the floor to Ambassador Karel van Oosterom, who is the permanent representative of the Netherlands to the United Nations.
Thank you very much, Gunther, and thank you to the organizer for organizing this impressive commemoration, this sad day of commemoration. The mass atrocities of 6 years must never be forgotten, and let's continue to work together to address the terrible consequences. Also today we are concerned about the vulnerable position of the Yazidis in the region. And from the Kingdom of the Netherlands, we try to do our contribution along three axes. First, the psychological, mental health consequences of what happened 6 years ago are prevalent, as we've heard some of the speakers already speak about. So we have some psychological assistance programs. Secondly, if you look at the economic situation, I think together we can do more. We try to do our bit, but together we could do more to invest in socio-economic development and employment. And third, the issue many of us, certainly Karim has talked about, of accountability. We try to support UNITAD as much as possible. Amal, we had a wonderful event with you last year in September when we put this issue on the agenda of the United Nations. But we, in spite of your work, Karim, we need a court. We see procedures in certain countries. We try to do what we can, but let's continue our work to get a real tribunal, to get real accountability. And if you have the time, Gunther, I will put my full remarks on Twitter. Thank you so much for organizing this. And thank you, Nadia, for your important work and your wonderful book, I think, which we all enjoyed so much. Thank you so much, Gunther.
Karel, thank you very much for these remarks. I shall now give the floor to Katalin. Katalin Bogyai is the permanent representative of Hungary to the United Nations. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Germany, for organizing this very important meeting. It's a great pleasure and honor always to see Nadia. She is a member of our family, and as a family member, we have to really address our conscience every moment when we see her. Hungary is firmly committed to protect minorities from persecution and violence, uphold their rights, including their freedom of religion and belief, and amplify their voices globally, with special regard to persecuted religious minorities, Yazidis, Christians in the Middle East and beyond. Today, actually, my state secretary for the aid of persecuted Christians is speaking at another panel organized by the Free Yazidi Foundation of this matter. The government has been working since several years now in the framework of the Hungary Helps initiative. For instance, the initiative provides an equivalent of 571,000 USD grant to displaced Yazidi refugees through educational, humanitarian, and economic recovery projects implemented by the two Yazidi organizations in Sinjar province and in Kurdistan, as well as building homes for Yazidi survivors of sexual violence. Our efforts so far have helped 70,000 internally displaced persons and refugees to return or stay safely in their ancestral homes, funded returnee support centers and rehabilitation programs, scholarships for higher education in Hungary, as well as the rebuilding of villages, places of worship, schools, and hospitals, many of the projects taking place actually in the northern Nineveh plains. Our mission is to enable Yazidi and other minorities to return to their homeland in a safe, dignified, and voluntary manner, to reestablish their historic communities, restart their lives, and pass their cultural heritage to the next generation. The presence of Yazidi and other minorities in the Middle East, preserving the cultural and religious diversity and heritage in a matter of human rights and international peace and security. Nadia, you can count on us. We will be working with you together in the future as well. There is so much to do, and there is so much to do for us together. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remark, Katalin. Next speaker on the list is Mia Maragarian, who's the permanent representative of Armenia to the United Nations. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, and I would like to thank Nadia's initiative campaign and permanent mission of Germany and the United Arab Emirates for organizing this important dialogue and for the opportunity to reflect on the plight of the Yazidi people in the face of mass atrocities perpetrated in the name of religion. I also want to applaud the courage and dedication of Nadia Murad and Amal Clooney and to acknowledge their relentless efforts in confronting atrocity crimes. It is important to constantly raise awareness on the existential threats faced by Yazidis, as well as Christian and other religious and ethnic groups in the Middle East as a consequence of inhumane ideology and atrocities perpetrated by the terrorist organizations such as Daesh, Al-Nusra Front, Al-Qaeda, and others in the very name of religion. Armenia remains gravely disturbed by the instances whereby entire communities are deliberately targeted for the mere fact of belonging to a particular ethnic or religious group. In 2018, the National Assembly of Armenia adopted a statement on the recognition and condemnation of the genocide of Yazidis by terrorist organizations, calling for the investigation and accountability for the crimes committed and to ensure security and protection of Yazidi people and take all necessary measures to make sure that all necessary measures are implemented for the prevention of human rights violations. Historically, our country has been a homeland for Yazidi people, and last year the largest Yazidi temple in the world was opened in Armenia, which also symbolizes the centuries-old interfaith and intercultural harmony and coexistence between the Armenian and Yazidi peoples. As a nation that has been subject to genocide in the early 20th century, Armenia has been consistently campaigning to reinforce the implementation of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide and to advance the prevention agenda internationally. In December this year, Armenia will be hosting the 4th Global Forum Against Crime of Genocide with a specific focus on plight of women, offering a gender perspective for prevention of genocide and crimes against humanity. And I want to reiterate the importance of building tolerance and inclusion for all ethnic, cultural, and religious identities and working towards advancing positive message of diversity and harmony of civilizations. At this difficult time of global crisis caused by the pandemic, irresponsible actions that serve to introduce new divisive lines between religious groups instead of providing cultural space and attempts of instrumentalizing important World Heritage Site with the purpose of promoting political agendas represent a matter of serious concern. In conclusion, Mr. Moderator, I want to once again thank the organizers for the valuable initiative and to emphasize the need to take resolute actions to highlight the importance of remembrance and commemoration as crucial elements to prevent future atrocities. Thank you.
Thanks, Ambassador, for your remarks. Next one on our speaker is D. Maxwell Kimaya, who's the permanent representative of Liberia and whom I haven't seen here in our VDC. So D. Maxwell, if you're there, you have the floor. There seems to be a technical problem here. So I suggest that we continue with the next speaker, who is my dear colleague Anne Gouga, Chargé d'Affaires and Deputy Permanent Representative of France. You have the floor, Anne.
Thank you very much, and I would like to join others at first to thank both Nadia Mourad and her initiative and the mission of Germany for organizing this event on a tragedy that we really must not forget. And France shares the concerns that have been expressed today, and I would like to underline three particular points in this regard. The first one is that we need to ensure that the Yazidis of Iraq get back a full restoration of their rights and of their conditions of living. It must be a priority of the national reconstruction and reconciliation effort in Iraq and the central part of the efforts to stabilize the areas that have been liberated from Daesh. France, as you know, is strongly committed to Iraq's recovery, as our minister, Jean-Yves Le Drian, has highlighted many times, and we do this through significant financial support. We've provided a multi-year line of funding of 1 billion euros to the Iraqi authorities to facilitate the reconstruction projects. And this year, with regard to the stabilization of the areas liberated from Daesh, we've committed 20 million already, in particular to build a hospital in Sinjar, but also to support the mining efforts and the provision of basic social and public services. The second point I would like to highlight that has been really the focus of most of speakers' interventions today is that we also need to make sure that the Yazidis will get justice for the unspeakable horror that they have suffered. France firmly believes in the importance of justice and accountability and in the reparation for the victims of Daesh. We commend the concrete efforts that have been already undertaken. We're providing support for the documentation of the mass violations of human rights committed by Daesh against minorities in Iraq and Syria. And we also support UNITAD's work in Iraq. As Amal Clooney has mentioned in her powerful remarks, France is among the countries where legal proceedings have been opened against the perpetrators of the crimes against the Yazidis. This has been done by the Paris Prosecutor's Office for Crimes Against Humanity, War Crimes and Genocides. And the third point I wanted to highlight is that we must continue and strengthen efforts to fight sexual violence and prevent its recurrence. As you know, if we want to overcome sexual violence in conflict and prevent its recurrence, we need an approach that is focused on survivors of sexual violence and on the empowerment of women. Survivors must have access to medical, psychological, and social follow-up to promote their return to a normal life. And in this regard, it's fundamental to walk the talk. And France is proud to have granted 6.2 million euros to the Mukwege Mourad Fund for Survivors of Sexual Violence that was launched in October last year. And as our President Macron promised to Nadia Mourad, France has also welcomed more than 100 Yazidi, in particular women and children, and we provide them with protection, security, education, and medical social support. Finally, France will host, as you know, the Generation Equality Forum next year in 2021, in which the issue of gender-based violence will be tackled through a dedicated action coalition. And to conclude, I'd just like to highlight that we believe that the key for systemic change, the systemic change that is needed to end conflict-related sexual violence in Iraq as elsewhere, lies in the empowerment of women, politically, socially, and economically. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. I now give the floor to Noah. Noah Fuhrman is the Deputy Permanent Representative of Israel to the United Nations. Noah, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'd like to thank our friends at the German Mission and Nadia's initiative for convening this UN digital dialogue commemorating the 6th anniversary of the genocidal campaign against the Yazidi minority. As we come together to commemorate this solemn event, we're also faced with an international pandemic, the likes of which the world has not seen in a century. These two events remind us of the need for a strong, unified international response. Just as the world needs to come together to fight the pandemic, we must unite to combat extremism, fundamentalism, and terrorism, especially religious-based terrorism. To prevent the atrocities perpetrated against the Yazidi people from happening again, we have a moral and humane obligation to not turn a blind eye to extremism, no matter where it exists. While we must be open to a diversity of opinions, we cannot tolerate groups that do not recognize the right of another to exist, no matter how small that group may be. Hesitating to fight extremism and fundamentalism under the guise of tolerance is dangerous. It is what allows terrorist groups to grow from a small group on the fringe of society into a powerful group that is able to execute horrific acts like what we witnessed by ISIS in 2014 in Iraq against the Yazidi minority. The painful lesson that we must learn from the Yazidi genocidal campaign, the killing, the sexual slavery and torture, the inhumane and degrading treatment, is that wherever groups that do not recognize the existence of other groups emerge, the world should take immediate action against them. Israel is ready to share its expertise in fighting such groups, as well as supporting the victims. For the past several years, Israeli institutions, particularly Bar-Ilan University and the humanitarian aid group Israel, have provided professional training to those who are treating the Yazidi victims, teaching them how to treat the symptoms of complex post-traumatic stress disorder and other trauma. We are ready to continue to offer such support and to work hand in hand with the international community. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement, Noah. The floor is now to Ambassador Luis Bermudez, the Deputy Permanent Representative of Uruguay.
Thank you very much, Gunther. Welcome to New York City once again. Thank you to Germany and UAE for convening us this morning. It's little to add of what has been said by both ministers, Ms. Nadia Mourad and Barrister Amal Clooney today. We just want to reconfirm our support to the Yazidi community in the right to restore their life and their self-esteem after the mass atrocities they suffered only 6 years ago. And in the other track, you can count within the UN community with the support of Uruguay in taking into account the perpetrators to the ICC or any special tribunal that is created in order to try this genocide and mass atrocities perpetrated in 2014. It's inconceivable that while we are entering in the phase of the decade of action of the 2030 agenda, and we are looking forward to have improvements and progress in the SDGs. Any improvement or progress done will be uneven if we don't get or we have a weak pillar in justice and accountability in atrocities such as the one committed against the Yazidi community only 6 years ago. This is yesterday. So we all have to keep in mind to strive in order to get responsibles to account, and you can count with the work of Uruguay and the advocacy in favor of the Yazidi community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Luis. And I give the floor to David. David Clay is the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much to all of the organisers for today's event. Like others, I'd like to begin by underlining the importance of this moment of remembrance. It's absolutely right that we take this moment 6 years on to remember the horrific crimes committed against the Yazidi and other communities in Iraq and Syria, but also to consider how we can collectively work to provide justice for the victims and support the survivors to rebuild their lives. I'd like to make 3 brief points today. Firstly, the victims of the horrific crimes against the Yazidi community deserve criminal justice, but also restorative justice. In that context, the UK remains firmly committed to UNITAD, and we look forward to the upcoming mandate renewal, which gives the international community the opportunity to reaffirm its commitment to UNITAD. The UK has contributed $2.6 million to the investigative team, and we welcome UNITAD's ongoing efforts to support prosecutions in Europe and to provide closure to thousands of survivors of Daesh violence by reuniting them with their missing and giving them access to psychosocial support. It remains incumbent on us all to find a solution with the government of Iraq, which enables UNITAD's evidence to be used effectively to bring those responsible to account and in trials which the victims can follow and participate in. My second point is that justice also means helping the victims of Daesh to rebuild their lives. The UK is helping through providing legal and psychosocial support to survivors of Daesh violence. The UK has provided funding of over $36 million to the UN Funding Facility for Stabilisation, which is helping Yazidis and others to return to their homes. The FFS is heavily committed to areas that are home to minority communities, including the Nineveh Plains, where it has completed over 490 projects to restore vital infrastructure and basic services. We are clear, however, that there is much more to be done by the Iraqi authorities and the international community. And my final point is that these Yazidis and all other Iraqis deserve to be able to live their lives in future in dignity, security, and peace of mind. Sadly, Daesh, despite its territorial defeat in Syria and Iraq and the significant progress made against it by the Iraqi security forces, the Peshmerga, and the international coalition, continues to plot and carry out attacks today, whether in Iraq, the UK, or many other countries. That is why the UK remains a leading member of the global coalition against Daesh, determined to ensure that Daesh cannot recover and repeat its appalling crimes. We owe nothing less to its victims. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you, David. I shall now give the floor to the last speaker, and then I will make a very short finishing remark, because by then it will be a couple of minutes after 12. Next speaker on my list is Fala Mustafa. He's the advisor to the president of the Kurdistan region in the Republic of Iraq.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be here with you on behalf of His Excellency Necirvan Barzani, the President of Kurdistan region of Iraq. I would also like to start by thanking the permanent mission of the Federal Republic of Germany, the United Arab Emirates mission, as well as Nadia Murad's initiative in hosting such an important event. We're all here today to express our solidarity and support on this tragic day that 6 years ago we have seen the brutality of ISIS. The Yazidi community have some expectations, and we together have to demonstrate to them that we are serious in meeting and responding to their expectations. Time has come for all of us in order to dot the I's and cross the T's. I would also like to stress on the fact that the federal government in Baghdad needs to prioritize this issue. As far as Kurdistan region is concerned, Erbil is ready to work closely with Baghdad and to cooperate on this file. First, in terms of security and stability of Sinjar and the vicinity of Sinjar. We are ready to cooperate with the federal government in order to have a joint security mechanism, the Peshmerga forces and the Iraqi army to be in charge of providing security to these areas and to leave the local policing for the local community itself, which means security and policing from the local Yazidi community in the area. Second, there are some forces which are in Sinjar today, and they have been the obstacle in the face of reconstruction and the safe return of the IDPs and refugees. Therefore, it's important for Erbil and Baghdad to cooperate in this. On the issue of the administration, Erbil is ready to cooperate with Baghdad and also with the Nineveh governorate in order to agree on a new mayor for Sinjar that will be acceptable to both sides, but also acceptable to the community in Sinjar itself. The same goes true for the sub-district mayors in the vicinity or in the district of Sinjar. We also need to work together in order to compensate the people of Sinjar and the Yazidis, even if it wanted to make Sinjar a province, so that they can manage their own affairs and they run their own affairs in the region. At the same time, we need a heavier engagement of the United Nations Assistance Mission in Iraq, UNAMI, and also our friends in the international community to help us, support us for the reconstruction of Sinjar so that people can have a safe, voluntary, and dignified return to their communities. In terms of bringing the perpetrators to justice and achieving justice, Erbil is ready to work closely with Baghdad as well as with UNITAD team, with the United Nations investigation team, to make sure that the perpetrators are brought to justice. We have been cooperating in collecting the evidence, in the training and capacity building, but also we are supporting any amendment or passage of laws in the Iraqi Council of Representatives to pave the way for the very first trials to take place so that we demonstrate to the Yazidi community and to the international community that justice is taking place. We all realize that Iraq is passing through a very transitional period. We need to put the political process in Iraq on the right path. But in order to do so, we need to ensure that this is inclusive and representative and that the Yazidis are treated equal like the rest of the communities in Iraq. We do need to work together to compensate those who have lost, the families of the victims, but also to support and help the victims themselves, the survivors who have suffered. We need to provide psychological and material support for all these people. Therefore, we need to work on a multifaceted plan, dealing with people in IDP camps, people who are refugees outside the country, people who have already gone back and returned to Sinjar, but most importantly, the survivors. So therefore, while we appreciate the sacrifices that have been made, we salute and commend the bravery and the resilience of Nadia Murad and the many other survivors and the entire Yazidi community who have suffered a lot. We need to do much more than what we have done, but time to act is now. We do understand that there is goodwill. There is a lot of goodwill in the international community, but we need to translate that into action, and the time to put that in action is today. Thank you very much.
Vala, thank you very much for this important statement. I shall now conclude this meeting by saying 4 things. Firstly, thank you very much. Thank you very much to Nadia, to Amal, and to everybody here, to those who have spoken and to those who, due to time constraints, have not been able to speak. it is encouraging to know that all of you are behind this important effort. Secondly, this is a very sad day, and the story that Nadia has reminded us today is an extremely sad story. Amidst this sadness, it is, I find, very encouraging and inspiring to see that it is a strong group of strong women who are pushing very hard in order to make us move ahead, not forget, and make sure there is no impunity, and make sure that there is a future for those who have become victims. My third point is Amal was reminding us that 75 years ago in my country, the Second World War ended with the unconditional surrender of Germany. This, I think, has been the deepest cut in the history of my country. There's many lessons to be learned from this moment, but I think one of the key lessons here is we must listen to the survivors. We must bring the perpetrators to justice. And what's probably the most important prerequisite for everything else, we must never forget. And I think this lesson that is to be drawn from our history, from the history of my country, is a lesson that we must bear in mind regarding the fate of the Yazidi community in Iraq. Let's not do that in an abstract sense, but let's work on this. I can only talk for my country and my delegation. We are using these 2 years that we have on the Security Council in order to fight for an international reaction that does not accept impunity for perpetrators. We are using national mechanisms that we have and that other countries have as well, in order to apply international law, in order not to allow for impunity. And we are using other United Nations fora, and we're using fora like the one today, in order to make sure that this is not forgotten. This brings me to my first point, to my fourth and last point, which is a very practical one. I thank everybody here for being in this meeting. Let's all make sure that we share the outcome of today's meeting. Let's sure we put this on Twitter, online, and so forth, in order to spread the news and in order to make sure in a very concrete way that Nadia's and Amal's efforts are taken, that people see this, that people hear this story, that they read the story, and let's make sure that this is not forgotten. Thank you very much, and goodbye. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you everyone so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.